Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin.
In the beginning, before language had names for feelings, before creatures looked upward with wonder, the color blue stretched silently across the sky. It was not always the color of calm. Long ago, blue was rare, strange, almost impossible to find in the feathers of birds or the petals of flowers. It did not warn like red, nor signal rot like the bruise of purple-black. Instead, it arrived slowly into the world, an accidental piece, scattered in molecules, painted not by purpose but by physics. The sky's blue is not made by pigment. It is a trick of light, a soft scattering of shorter wavelengths that bounce gently through the atmosphere. Rayleigh scattering, they call it, the reason that even when clouds are gone, the sky does not turn white. Short blue light dances across our eyes, spread wide like breath over water. The world chose to scatter blue not with intent, but with the subtle mathematics of molecules. Yet from this scattered wave, comfort grew. As eyes evolved, sensitive to wavelengths of light, blue became a signal of stillness. No fire burned there. No predator leapt from its hue. It was a color found in the lull of afternoon, in the hush of approaching twilight. In time, brains that survived began to associate this wavelength with rest. Evolution did not whisper, "This is calm," but the creatures who rested beneath blue skies survived long enough to feel safe in its presence. In certain animals, like butterflies and beetles, the appearance of blue comes not from dye but from microscopic structures that bend light. Iridescent wings shimmer not with ink but with finely sculpted surfaces that play with the air. Why would such fragile beings choose blue, this rare color in nature? Perhaps because it was not seen as threat, a soft surprise, a signal that said, "Look, I am not here to fight." As mammals emerged, their eyes carried rods and cones shaped to parse the language of light. They saw warm colors first, yellows and reds, the shades of sun and blood and ripe fruit. Blue came later, like a gentle hush layered on top, and when it came, it arrived with sleep. Night descended not in black but in deepening blues. Dusk became the place where blue met gray, and something inside the mind began to slow. Humans, too, held this connection without knowing. Ancient temples were painted in soft lapis. Blue beads were woven into amulets of peace. In Egypt, blue was sacred, associated not with war but with the gods of creation and sky. Across the oceans, in caves and on cliffs, humans used blue sparingly, almost reverently. It was costly to find the indigo from leaves, the lapis from rock, the ultramarine that came from the mines of distant lands. Blue was not born from blood. It was born from patience. And even today, when we wrap ourselves in soft blankets or paint nurseries in pastel hues, blue remains a comfort. Not because we were told it is, but because for thousands of years it has watched over us from above. It is a color we never needed to fear, a hue that never chased or stung. It simply existed, stretched across the sky, vast and wordless. You can almost feel it now, that gentle breath of color, the way it settles in behind the eyes, the way it makes no demand. Blue does not shout, it does not flash, it lingers, it comforts. Not by design, but by the slow unfolding of light, of life, of ancient sight learning what to trust. So tonight, if you look up into the fatting sky and feel a quiet inside you, know that you are part of a long story. A story of scattered light and resting minds. A story where the sky chose, in its own wordless way, to carry calm in the shape of blue. Now let us drift deeper into the world of color and calm. If blue was the first to soothe, green was the next to cradle the eyes. The color of leaves, of mossy hills, of tender stems stretching toward the light. Green did not scream like orange or burn like crimson. It blanketed the earth, not in threat but in continuity. And over time, the nervous systems of creatures learned that where green abounds, life flourishes. Green comes from chlorophyll, the pigment that plants use to catch the sun. In a way, green is light remembered. It is what is left behind when a plant absorbs the reds and blues it needs to feed. And what it reflects is the in-between, the spectrum of rest. This middle tone, neither hot nor cold, became the color of endurance, of stillness, of time moving slowly. In forests, animals that stared too long at red would miss the rustle of danger, but green blended with background, forming a camouflage of calm. It surrounded without asking attention. It was the baseline of vision. And for humans, the early primates who lived in trees, green meant safety. It meant food was near, the ground was far, and nothing needed to run. The mind could breathe when it saw green. Over generations, this became embedded in emotion. Today, hospitals use green walls to quiet the body. Schools choose soft green tones for focus. Walks in nature lower the heartbeat. It is not magic, it is memory. Not the memory of one life, but the cellular memory of countless creatures that knew green was not to be feared. And yet not all colors soothed. Some were born from alarm. Red, for instance, came first as fire, as fruit, as blood. It meant heat. It meant hunger. It meant danger or desire. So when did it soften? When did red become the warmth of love, the curve of a heart, the comfort of home? The answer is found in familiarity. When a signal repeats often enough and the context becomes safe, the mind slowly rewrites its story. What once warned now welcomes. A red apple in a basket becomes a promise, not a peril. A red blanket over a shoulder becomes protection, not threat. The color remains, but its meaning transforms. Pink is one such transformation. It does not occur often in the wild. There is no pink flame, no pink storm, but it blooms in flowers, in coral reefs, in the morning sky. It is red diluted by light, and where it appears it brings not urgency but softness. Some scientists believe this reaction is cultural. Others think it's biological, that we are wired to respond gently to pale versions of strong signals. Pink became the color of nurture. It wrapped itself around bobbies, held hands in springtime. Even in prisons, pale pink cells were used to reduce aggression. And in those cells, heart rates dropped. The body forgot to fight, because somewhere deep inside, pale red had become a whisper. Color is not just something we see, it's something we feel. When you step into a room bathed in soft yellow light, you feel warmth even before the sun touches you. That yellow mimics the low sun, the time of rest, the hour when nothing hunts. And this is not an accident. Through thousands of years, as diurnal creatures rose with dawn and slept at dusk, yellow became a cue for comfort. It is the light that says, "You are safe, you are home." Even the way we use color and language mirrors this history. We say feeling blue not because the color brings sadness, but because it invites slowness, introspection. We say someone is green when they are new, like a sprout. We describe warmth in terms of red, even if nothing burns. These phrases are echoes of evolution, carried forward in speech, just as they are carried in light. But why does this matter? Why explore how colors shifted from warning to warmth? Because it reveals something beautiful about life, that evolution does not always favor alarm, that sometimes survival is not in the flash of threat but in the slow trust of peace. Colors once meant to startle became symbols of comfort. This did not happen all at once. It happened across ages, across species, across generations of eyes learning that calm colors last. You can almost imagine the first creature to gaze at a field of flowers, not with fear but with wonder. You can picture the way a butterfly's wings shimmered in the air, not to frighten but to dance. You can feel the early humans sitting near a fire, the orange glow not just warmth but ritual. In each moment, color moved toward quiet. Now, in our modern lives, surrounded by painted walls and glowing screens, we still carry these instincts. The need for calm colors, the yearning for skis that soothe. It is no wonder that we decorate our homes in pale greens and blues, that we build parks and plant gardens. We are trying, in our own way, to recreate the comfort that evolution once painted across the world. So the next time you sit by a window and watch the leaves sway, or stand beneath a blue sky and feel the quiet settle in your bones, remember, these colors did not shout to earn their place. They arrived gently. They stayed patiently. And in doing so, they taught us to rest. Let's now wander toward the quiet close of the story, to the place where color meets memory, where comfort is not just seen but felt. Because colors do not live only in the world, they live in us. In the folds of the brain, in the rhythms of the heart, in the way we remember the past and imagine the future. Every shade we encounter is filtered through the soft lens of experience, and in that filtering, meaning is born. Children often draw the sun in yellow, even when they've never touched it. They color grass in green, skis in blue, hearts in red, not because anyone told them to, but because the world itself has taught these lessons gently over time. It is a quiet education passed down from leaf to leaf, from sky to skin, from generation to generation. These early choices are not random. They reflect something deeper, a universal, emotional palette inherited through biology and softened through culture. Inside the brain, the visual cortex does more than decode wavelengths. It speaks to memory centers, to the hippocampus, to the limbic system. A certain shade of blue might recall the ceiling of a childhood bedroom. A faded green might conjure up a summer afternoon in the grass. And pink, the soft kind, might remind someone of a loved one's shirt, the safety of arms, the feeling of being held. These connections shape not just what we see, but how we feel when we see it. Even animals carry these associations. Birds choose mates based on plumage not just for health, but for hue. Some fish grow calmer in tanks with gentle lighting. In experiments, cows have been found to relax under blue-tinted lights, their breathing slowing, their movements becoming gentler. Color affects the nervous system across species. It quiets, it excites, it guides behavior without words. And yet color remains one of the most silent forms of language. It does not demand attention with sound. It does not insist on meaning. It simply exists, waiting to be felt. A room painted in warm cream becomes more inviting. A hospital bathed in pale green becomes less sterile. A blanket in soft gray becomes a hug in fabric form. None of this is accidental. Architects, designers, and healers have long known, perhaps intuitively, that the right shade can speak where speech fails. Consider the aurora borealis, the shimmering green curtains of light that dance across polar skis. They are made by charged particles colliding with gases, but we don't think of physics when we watch them. We think of magic. We feel awe. The light does not warn. It invites. And perhaps that's the most profound shift of all, that color has become something not just to notice but to trust. Once colors were signals for survival, bright patches warning of venom, stark contrasts alerting the eye to danger. But over time, life found room for softness. Flowers bloomed not just to defend, but to attract. Skins evolved not just to threaten, but to hide in plain sight. And eyes adapted to appreciate this change. Comfort became a strategy too. Not all battles are won with sharpness. Some are won with stillness. And so we now live in a world awash with this evolutionary kindness. The calm tones of morning light, the blush of evening clouds, the softness of blue jeans, the pastel of worn books, the familiar glow of old lamps. These things carry the history of color's quiet transformation, not from warning to weakness, but from urgency to understanding. Even in modern design, the trend toward minimalism is not without emotional depth. It favors muted palettes, earthy tones, shades that soothe rather than startle. Perhaps this is not just taste but instinct, a return to the colors that once helped us survive by making us feel safe enough to rest. In a world that moves quickly, we seek stillness wherever we can find it. And color, that ancient signal, still knows how to guide us there. Now imagine a forest just after rain. The greens are deeper, the browns richer, the blues of distant hills more quiet than before. No danger here, just the slow breathing of the earth wrapped in color that does not scream. Or think of an old quilt passed down through hands, faded reds, softened yellows, threads of blue that no longer shine but feel like memory. These things are not accidents. They are the poetry of biology, the art of evolution painting with a gentler brush. And perhaps in the end, that is the story of color itself, that through countless cycles of survival and adaptation, of trial and transformation, the world taught us not only how to see, but how to feel. That the same wavelengths which once triggered caution now cradle our senses, encouraging us to pause, to breathe, to sleep. So tonight, when the light fades and shadows stretch, let yourself be held by the colors around you. Let your eyes rest on the quiet blue of the sky's last breath. Let your thoughts settle into the hush of green leaves pressed against the window. Let the warm memory of peach and rose and amber fold over you like a soft blanket. These are not just colors. They are stories. They are comforts. They are proof that even evolution, in all its complexity, knows how to be gentle. The blue of the sky, the green of the earth, the soft pink of tenderness, the warm yellow of home, these are not merely accidents of light, they are invitations, and tonight they invite you to rest. Before language, before buildings, before maps carved the world into borders, there was green. It grew quietly across the earth, spreading its gentle fingers across valleys and up the sides of mountains, filling the air with a hush that didn't need to speak. Green was everywhere, and everywhere it settled, life followed. It was not a shout like red, not a call like orange. It was a resting place, a breath, a space where things could grow slowly without fear. The color green, as we know it, lives in the heart of photosynthesis. It comes from chlorophyll, the molecule that allows plants to drink the sun. This pigment, nestled inside leaves, absorbs red and blue light to make energy but reflects green. And so, quite by accident, the one color the plant does not need becomes the one we see. It's the color of what is left behind. And in that leftover light, life found its rhythm. To walk through a green forest is to feel your body begin to soften. The sounds are muffled. The edges of things blur. Your eyes adjust without strain because green sits in the middle of the visible spectrum, neither short nor long in wavelength. It is the balance point, the color our eyes are most attuned to receive. Some scientists believe this is why green calms us so deeply. It is the place where vision rests, where nothing shouts for attention. It is not just seen, it is absorbed without resistance. Over time, the presence of green became a signal. In lush landscapes, food was nearby. Water was not far. Animals, too, began to associate green with safety. Deer rested in meadows. Birds nested in leafy groves. Even insects adapted to blend into this sea of green, finding protection in invisibility. Evolution favored those who could live quietly within the foliage. And so, green became more than a color. It became a feeling, a memory passed down through the senses. Humans, emerging from forests and grasslands, carried these instincts with them. The earliest shelters were built from branches, their walls draped in vines. Medicines came from green leaves. Food grew in green fields. And even as we left nature behind, building cities of stone and steel, we brought pieces of green with us. We planted gardens in courtyards, painted walls in sage and olive, filled windowsills with potted herbs. Without green, something inside us frays. With it, we remember how to breathe. This isn't poetry alone, it's physiology. Studies have shown that being in green spaces lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. Heart rates slow, blood pressure drops. The brain begins to shift from survival mode to rest. This response is so consistent that doctors now prescribe time in nature as a form of treatment. It is called ecotherapy, and at its core, it is simply this: let green hold you for a while. But not all greens are equal. There is a difference between the bright chartreuse of new leaves and the deep emerald of old pines. Pale greens, like the underside of eucalyptus, feel different from the dark canopy of a jungle, and humans sense this intuitively. Lighter greens soothe like a whisper near the ear. They feel open, breathable, uncluttered. Darker greens offer shelter, a place to hide. They are the color of shade and depth. Together, they form a full spectrum of calm. We use green in rituals of healing. In hospitals, walls are often painted in soft greens because it's the color easiest on the eyes during long hours. In therapy rooms, jade or moss-toned furniture can help patients relax. In yoga studios and meditation spaces, sage and olive are chosen not for trend, but for comfort. Green does not intrude. It allows space to feel. In many cultures, green is tied to renewal. In Islam, it represents paradise. In Chinese philosophy, it is the color of wood, of growth, of spring, of birth. In Celtic lore, green spirits lived in the forests, guiding and guarding those who walked gently. These stories did not emerge from nowhere. They arose from generations of humans watching green return after every winter, watching the bear become full again. Green became the promise that life would continue. Even in our language, green has carried meaning beyond its hue. To be green is to be new, fresh, still learning. A green thumb is someone who brings life from the soil. We speak of green pastures as places of peace and plenty. These expressions echo the way green has always touched us, not with brilliance but with balance. It does not need to be rare to be precious. It needs only to be present. Now imagine standing at the edge of a meadow at dawn. The light is soft, the dew clings to blades of grass. There is no sound except the slow stirring of insects and birds waking to the world. The green here is not loud. It is not trying to be anything at all. It simply is, and in its being it welcomes, it says, "Stay a little longer, rest." This is the story of soft greens, not as decoration, not as background, but as balm. A quiet companion that reminds us we are part of something steady, something that grows without rush, that shelters without noise, that returns again and again, no matter how harsh the season before. Let's drift deeper into the green, into the gentle weave of biology and memory. The way plants speak to light is a kind of song, not in sound but in energy exchange. Each leaf opens itself like a slow breath, receiving the sun not with hunger but with a quiet agreement. It is this quiet that has shaped us, not in bursts of color or alarm but in the steadiness of growth, the rhythm of chlorophyll capturing photons day after day, making sugars, building life molecule by molecule. Green is not fast. Green is never in a rush. And so those who dwell in green spaces begin to slow too. Inside the leaf, the process unfolds with patience. Photosystems, tiny clusters of proteins and pigments, gather sunlight, splitting water molecules, releasing oxygen into the air. That oxygen fills our lungs. The carbon dioxide we exhale is taken in by the leaf in return. It's a cycle of breath across kingdoms, of trees and lungs speaking to one another. And in the very heart of this breath there is green, not as decoration but as the medium of life itself. We may not notice it, but our bodies respond to this exchange. In the presence of abundant green, our immune systems stabilize. Natural killer cells, the body's quiet guardians, become more active after time spent in forests. Some researchers call this effect forest bathing. It is not about walking. It is about being, about letting the sights and smells and softness of the wood recalibrate the body's stress response. Just 20 minutes among the trees can shift the chemistry of the blood. And the trees do not ask anything in return. They only continue their slow, green work. In Japan, Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, is considered a form of preventative medicine, but the forest does not heal by force. It does not fix, it does not cure, it surrounds, it embraces. It offers space to be part of a world that moves on a different clock. This is the wisdom of green, to allow things to unfold at their own pace. Growth is not loud, it is not dramatic. It is a reaching upward, one cell at a time. And there is beauty in the details, moss spreading over stone like in tracing ancient bark, ferns unfurling like soft scrolls. These textures are not sharp. They do not flash or warn. They invite touch, closeness, quiet examination. Our fingers slow over velvet leaves. Our eyes soften in the filtered light of canopy. Even the air itself is different, cooler, moister, richer in compounds that trees release in tiny amounts. Phytoncides, they are called. Invisible scents that calm the nervous system and lower anxiety. To walk through a green forest is to walk through a chemical lullaby. And it is not just forests, fields of rice, hills of tea, terraced gardens winding along the mountainside. Humans have shaped green as much as green has shaped humans. We learned to grow things, to sow and harvest and tend. And in doing so, we surrounded ourselves with the comfort of soft green, crops in rows, vines in bloom. We do not often think of farming as poetry, but there is a deep rhythm to it, a seasonal pulse that aligns with the body. It is the most ancient form of being held by green. In urban spaces, we try to recreate this connection. Parks are carved from cement grids. Rooftop gardens stretch toward gray skis. Potted plants sit beside screens and wires. We crave the reminder. Even a single leaf on a windowsill can become a kind of anchor, a piece of the older world, a thread to tug us back to the place where everything began to grow. There is something in our eyes that remembers, even when our minds forget. Bobbies will look longer at green than at many other colors. People healing from trauma often feel safest in green rooms. And in dreams, when the brain floats untethered, green often appears as landscape, not object. Grass, trees, hills, a return to place, a return to rest. Soft greens are often used in rituals we don't name as such. Hanging eucalyptus in a shower, laying mint leaves in water, folding clothes in olive tones. They are gestures of gentleness, chosen again and again across time and culture. And when people decorate nurseries, choose fabric, paint walls for the old and the young alike, green emerges quietly, like it always does. A choice not made in haste, but in hope. Even in music, green finds a place. Composers write of green hills and summer glades. Poets echo the same lines: the green fuse that drives the flower, the green light at the end of Daisy's dock, under the greenwood tree. Literature and lyric both touched by chlorophyll, even when it is never named. Because the green we carry is more than what we see. It is the place inside us that wants to keep growing. Green is not dramatic. It does not demand awe, but it leaves a mark. Long after the moment has passed, long after we've left the field or the woods or the garden, we remember how we felt in the green. Safe, small, steady, like something inside had aligned without words. It is this feeling that keeps us seeking it again and again, not because it is rare, but because it reminds us of what is constant. Now imagine lying beneath a willow tree, the leaves swaying overhead like a soft curtain. The air is cool. The light filters in pale jade and honey. Around you, the world hums without hurry. You are not doing anything. And yet, you are participating in something ancient. A moment that has happened millions of times in millions of places. The stillness of soft green. The peace of simply being alive. Let us now return gently, as all green paths do, to the end of this quiet journey, to the moment where the story no longer seeks to explain but to rest. The color green has carried us across time, across forests and fields, across cells and senses. But it is not done with us. It waits in every corner, still offering its stillness, still reminding us that not everything needs to be bright to be beautiful. Some things only need to be present, to be constant, to be soft. There's something profound in the way green lingers. When flowers fade, it is the green stems that remain. When leaves fall, the memory of their shape is held in the bare branches, in the quiet soil that waits below. Even in winter, under the cold white hush, the promise of green sleeps silently, curled in roots and seeds. It does not push. It does not ask. It simply endures, knowing it will return when the time is right. In the human mind, this patience is a kind of mirror. When we close our eyes after a long day, the images that remain are not always the brightest. Often they are the softest. The way the afternoon light fell on the grass, the blur of trees outside a moving window, the quiet color of someone's shirt as they turned to smile. These are the greens that stay with us. Not the ones that dazzled, but the ones that let us feel. Soft green, in many ways, is the color of presence. It marks what is alive, what is in motion but not hurried. It is the color of now, of growth that doesn't demand witness. And this is why we trust it. Green does not pretend. It does not distort. It simply shows us what is already there and allows us to notice it slowly. As we move through modern life, so filled with sound, with speed, with screen-lit hours, green becomes more precious. Not because it has changed, but because we have. We have forgotten how to wait, forgotten how to sit among growing things without needing them to speak. And yet when we are surrounded by green, something old stirs, the shoulders drop, the breath deepens, the mind, used to chasing, begins to return. This is the medicine that does not come in bottles. This is the healing that wears no label. You can find it in simple places. In the ivy climbing a forgotten wall, in the weeds growing through cracks in concrete, in the sprout in a jar on a kitchen windowsill. These fragments of green may not seem powerful, but they are. They are reminders that even in the most unnatural spaces, life insists on softness. Green insists on being where it is needed. And perhaps this is what makes green so special, not just its biological purpose, but its emotional generosity. It doesn't care whether you are happy or tired, whether you are searching or lost. It offers peace anyway, a peace that does not rely on explanation, a peace that does not require anything in return. This is not something that can be manufactured. It can only be remembered. When artists paint healing, they reach for green. When architects design spaces for rest, they include gardens. When cultures mourn, they gather in fields. When people celebrate, they hang green garlands. Across grief and joy, across silence and song, green arrives quietly, tying it all together. It is the color of balance, not between opposites, but between the heart and the world. And so, as this story settles, as the sentences begin to drift like leaves on still water, let yourself feel what green has been trying to tell you. That rest is not laziness. That stillness is not emptiness. That peace is not the absence of action, but the presence of something older than action. Something that lives in chloroplasts and memories. Something that wraps itself around you like soft moss on stone and says, "You do not have to hurry." Now picture again the forests, the meadows, the gardens of your memory. Picture the moments where green surrounded you without asking for anything. A childhood field, a path behind your house, the plants in a loved one's home. All the places where you breathed a little deeper, where your mind stopped spinning, where the world felt wide and kind and slow. Those were not coincidences. Those were green moments. Moments where life whispered instead of shouted. And maybe this is the legacy of soft green. Not that it changed the world in bursts or flames, but that it stayed. Through storms, through seasons, through centuries of change, it stayed. And in staying, it shaped us. It taught us how to be soft, how to grow without noise, how to comfort without words. Tonight, as the day fades and the world folds itself into sleep, let green keep you company. Let it unfurl in your thoughts like vines over time. Let it wrap around your dreams with the hush of forests and the hush of gardens and the hush of things that know how to rest. Because soft green does not disappear, it only waits for you to see it. And once you do, it never leaves. Close your eyes and feel the green of all you've loved. The green of comfort, the green of return, the green that grows in you even now. Long before it was called by name, before it was stitched into dresses or painted on nursery walls, pink drifted quietly into the world. It came not as a command, but as a blush of light, of petal, of sky just before it turns to gold. Pink did not arrive to shout. It arrived to soften. It was born not of fire or fear, but of dilution. Red melted into light, fierce pigment folded into calm. And in that melting, something new appeared, something gentle. Something the world did not know it needed until it saw it blooming. In the spectrum of light, pink is not a true wavelength. It does not exist as a single beam traveling through space. Rather, it is a blend, a bridge between red and violet, a color that emerges only when light is filtered and interpreted. Some scientists call it an impossible color, one that exists only in the mind. But if pink is imagined, it is a powerful imagining, one that lives not in what is seen, but in how it makes us feel. The first pinks to appear in nature were not accidents. In flowers, pink evolved to invite, not to threaten like red berries that warn, but to lure gently, bees, butterflies, and birds drawn in by soft hues signaling sweetness. Petals turned blush to whisper, "Come closer. You are safe here." In return, these visitors carried pollen from one bloom to another, weaving life through gardens and meadows. Pink became a partner in reproduction, a color of quiet promise. Even among animals, pink has a presence not tied to power but to openness. Flamingos gain their color from what they eat, tiny pink crustaceans that tint their feathers with carotenoid pigments. Newborn mammals, unprotected by fur, often arrive into the world tinged with pink skin, fragile, unfinished, alive. In these cases, pink is not a display of dominance. It is a declaration of vulnerability, and strangely, this vulnerability became a signal of connection. Humans notice this too. As skin flushes with blood, emotions rise, embarrassment, affection, warmth. Cheeks turning pink became a sign of softness, of truth exposed, and so the color found its way into ritual. In ancient cultures, pink clay was used in ceremonial masks and healing pastes. In others, it was reserved for rare textiles, dyed from shells and flowers whose color faded with time. Pink did not last, and perhaps that made it more precious. Over time, pink entered language as a metaphor. In the pink to mean health, pink of dawn to describe the day's most peaceful light, pinky promise to capture a small but sacred vow. It slipped gently into our stories and our gestures, not as a command but as a comfort. And when paint became accessible, when walls and books and toys could be colored, pink was chosen again and again, not to control but to cradle. It is easy to forget that pink, like all colors, was not always understood the same way. In centuries past, pink was worn by warriors. In 18th century Europe, it adorned noblemen. It was seen as a softer red, a noble cousin to a powerful hue. Gender did not yet assign it meaning. It was simply beauty, simply grace. The shift came slowly through marketing and fabric and fiction as certain colors were given roles. But pink remained what it always was, a quiet contradiction. A strength that looked like tenderness. In the body, we respond to pink differently than we do to red. While red increases adrenaline and alertness, pink slows the breath. Pale pink walls in hospitals reduce aggression. In classrooms, soft rose lighting can calm overstimulated children. There is something about this hue, neither hot nor cold, neither loud nor empty, that makes the nervous system pause, not stop, not sleep, just pause and settle and listen. And perhaps this is what makes pink so special. It is the color of the in-between, between waking and dreaming, between blood and light, between power and peace. It does not demand to be noticed, yet once it is seen, it is rarely forgotten. It lingers like a scent, like the memory of a hand once held, like the warmth left behind by touch. Imagine now a sky just before dawn. It has not yet turned blue, but the black has begun to lift. A strip of color appears at the horizon, soft, almost hesitant. That is pink. It is the color that breaks the night, not with noise, but with hope. It is the moment when the day begins to remember itself. And in that remembering, pink opens the door. This is not the color of warning. This is not the color of retreat. It is the color of welcome, of breath taken in after crying, of silk drying in the wind, of flowers blooming when no one is looking. It is a reminder that softness is not the absence of strength. It is a different kind of strength, one that holds instead of strikes, one that listens instead of commands, one that says, I see you, you are safe here. So let pink settle over you like first light on skin. Let it return not as a style or a trend, but as a whisper of the body, of the world, of the long, patient invention of comfort. Let it be the quiet answer to all that is loud. Let it be the color you do not chase, but simply notice, again and again, whenever the world begins to soften. Now let us drift deeper into the tender origins of pink, beyond the petals and pigments, into the fibers of perception, into the ways the human mind quietly built an entire emotional landscape around this elusive shade. Because pink was never only something seen, it was something felt, something associated with warmth before touch, with safety before certainty. It lived in the softest corners of experience. A mother's hum, a warm towel folded from sunlight, the inside of a seashell. And slowly, across centuries, pink became a signal that there was nothing to fear. The biology of color perception begins in the eye, but pink's emotional story begins in the brain. When light enters, it strikes the cones in our retina, cells that decode wavelengths into color. But the brain does something more. It begins to associate those wavelengths with experiences. The pale pink of a setting sun may not biologically differ from a pale fruit blossom, but emotionally, both may bring calm. Over time, through repetition, through environment, through culture, the softest reds, those touched by white, became deeply embedded in the language of care. In newborns, pink is the earliest sign of health. Their flushed cheeks, tiny fingertips, lips warm with blood just beneath the surface, all are pink. And the human response to this is nearly universal. Caregivers respond more quickly, more gently to infants with that natural rosy hue. Evolutionarily, it is believed this helped ensure survival. Those who inspired nurturing were more likely to thrive. So even from the beginning, pink was linked to preservation through affection. Across cultures, pink took different shapes but often arrived through the same passageways: petals, silks, fruit skins, mineral powders. In the ancient Indian tradition, rose was used in garlands and sacred offerings. In Chinese art, pink blossoms symbolized youth, vitality, and the ephemeral nature of life. In Middle Eastern deserts, stone and clay took on a dusty pink that reflected both heat and grace. These were not loud colors, they were whispers. Yet they adorned temples, shawls, lovers' letters, and dreams. But it wasn't just tradition. There was something scientific at work too. Our bodies under pink-toned light appear smoother, warmer, healthier. This is why pink lighting is used in spaces of intimacy and reflection. It softens contrast. It makes harsh lines vanish. The nervous system interprets this as a cue to relax, to let go of vigilance. This is not an illusion. It is a biological invitation to rest. And so the spaces painted in pink became places where people could breathe slower, speak softer, linger longer. In the 20th century, psychologists began to experiment with color's effects on behavior. One famous study painted prison cells in a color now called Baker-Miller pink, a soft, bubblegum hue. Inmates placed in these rooms exhibited reduced aggression and tension. Their muscles relaxed involuntarily. The color, so often dismissed as decorative, proved medicinal. And though the results weren't permanent, they revealed a truth long known but rarely studied: that pink could change the temperature of the mind. This was no accident. This was the outcome of centuries of quiet interaction with a color that soothed without demanding notice. And while culture has since turned pink into symbol of femininity, of childhood, of sweetness, its roots are older, deeper, and more universal. They reach back to when early humans first watched the sky shift to rose at dusk and knew it was time to return home. And still, pink shows up in the smallest, most comforting ways. In the lining of seashells worn smooth by tide and time. In the flush of ripe guavas, strawberries kissed by sunlight. In faded linens passed through hands and homes. In soap bubbles floating, almost invisible yet iridescent with hints of rose. These are not grand gestures. These are fragments, but they stitch together a pattern: pink, again and again, showing up when comfort is needed most. We use pink to apologize gently, to welcome guests, to mark the softest beginnings. A first flower from a child, a wedding invitation sealed with blush, a silk scarf, a pastel envelope, a room filled with peonies. Each a soft echo of what pink has come to mean: not just beauty but ease, not just softness but healing. It is chosen not because it commands but because it forgives. Even in nature, predators often avoid the pinkest blooms. These are usually not associated with defense, but with reproduction, with sweetness, with delicacy. Bees, who see differently than us, are drawn to pink as a sign of nectar. Butterflies, fragile and floating, often dance toward pink as if it speaks a language they understand. Perhaps it does. And in the human mind, pink continues its quiet work. In therapy offices, it eases conversation. In bedrooms, it cradles sleep. In the palettes of makeup, it enhances without overpowering. Artists use pink to hold the eye, not to shout but to whisper, "Stay." Designers use it to lower the pulse. Filmmakers tint entire scenes in rose when they want a memory to feel soft. Because pink is not just light, it is mood. It is memory. It is the color of holding. Now picture a garden just after sunrise. The light is pale and the petals of open roses seem to glow. There is no harshness here, no demand, just the quiet unfolding of color meant only to be seen and loved. This is the heart of pink, not flashy, not empty, just present, just offering itself petal by petal, tone by tone, like a hand extended in peace. And maybe that is what pink was always meant to be: an invitation. Not to look but to feel, not to rush but to rest, to enter a space without armor, to soften, to slow, to be reminded gently that the world still knows how to cradle you when you forget how to stand. Now let us move gently toward the end of Pink's quiet story, where the color leaves behind pigment and enters emotion, memory, and meaning. Because if pink was invented softly by nature, it was kept alive by the human heart. Through time and transformation, it has remained a color of reassurance, not because it demanded that role, but because it kept arriving in the spaces where peace was needed most. And in doing so, it became a part of us. A color not just seen, but carried. In the modern world, pink is everywhere, yet still often misunderstood. It is sometimes mistaken for fragility, mistaken for decoration, mistaken for a surface when it has always been a depth. But when we look closely, beyond stereotype, beyond trend, we find that pink has always marked the in-between, between warmth and cool, between presence and pause, between the breath in and the breath out. And that is why it matters. Think of the sky during twilight, not yet night, no longer day. That color stretching across the horizon, neither blue nor red, is pink. It holds the light while letting it go. It says goodbye with softness. This is not a color that clings. This is a color that accepts, that understands cycles, that knows how to release with grace. In grief, pink has often appeared, faded roses laid gently on a grave, a soft scarf kept from someone now gone, the quiet flush that rises in the face when memories return too suddenly. It is the color of tears that fall without sound. And yet in birth it appears again, the pink of a newborn skin, the pale blanket wrapped around first breaths. Pink holds both ends of life, somehow finding a way to exist in joy and sorrow without needing to choose. Artists have long used pink as an anchor. Georgia O'Keeffe painted desert flowers with warm rose tones, turning petals into meditations. Monet captured dawn over water in whispers of pink, not to portray realism, but to portray feeling. Contemporary artists use it to reclaim softness, to heal, to reimagine vulnerability as power. And in every generation, pink finds a new way to speak without shouting. In design, pink has re-emerged not as fashion but as space. A blush sofa in a sunlit room, pale rose walls in a corner for reading, restaurants and hotels wrapped in dusty pink to create not luxury but intimacy. These are not spaces made to impress. They are made to hold, to slow the world down for a moment, to remind people of the small softnesses that make life worth noticing. And science continues to trace pink's presence in places we once overlooked. The inside of muscles, the light beneath eyelids, the tongue's gentle pink telling us we are alive and well. Even our cells under a microscope stain pink when scientists want to see their shape more clearly. It is not a harsh dye, it is a clarifying one. Pink makes things visible gently. And maybe that's what pink does best. It reveals, but only what we are ready to see. It does not startle, it does not confront, it says, "When you're ready, I am here." Whether in the petals of an old book-pressed flower or the fabric of a worn shirt, pink waits. It does not fade in meaning, even if it fades in shade. It holds its softness. In moments of silence, pink returns. In the quiet between conversations. In the warm light of a late afternoon kitchen. In the reflections on glass during a calm ride home. These aren't moments people often photograph, but they are moments people remember, because they felt safe. And more often than not, pink was there, not as the subject, but as the setting. There is something miraculous in how pink shows up without needing to be seen. In the rim of clouds after rain, in the inside of a seashell, in the blur of cherry blossoms beyond focus. It is almost shy, almost invisible, and yet it makes the world feel full. It is the punctuation of comfort, the breath at the end of a sentence. So tonight, as you lay still and the light around you dims, let pink remain, not in your sight but in your sense of being. Let it be the warmth that holds your thoughts, the softness that lets your mind let go. Let it remind you that not all strength comes with noise. Some strength is in gentleness, in the ability to soothe, in the courage to stay soft in a world that often asks for hardness. Pink will not insist. It will not press itself into your dreams, but it will be there as it always has been, in the calm, in the memory, in the small spaces between the louder colors. It will keep whispering the same message: you are held, you are enough, you are safe to rest. And in that whisper, in that unseen but unmistakable presence, the gentle invention of pink continues, not as an event but as a process, not as a color alone but as a kindness, a softness that has traveled through time, through light, through petals and skin and sky to arrive here, with you. Close your eyes now and feel the hush of pink around you, the warmth of all things that love without needing to be loud. Let it carry you into stillness, into safety, into sleep. Long before words, long before human eyes learned to search the world for beauty, there were flowers. Not in vases or gardens or painted on paper, but wild and patient, blooming into light without ever needing to be seen. They unfolded for bees, for wind, for the quiet rhythm of season and sun. Their petals were not always bright, not always bold. Many were pale, soft, gentle, shades chosen not to shout but to whisper, to soothe, to invite the world in without force. In the beginning, flowers were simply strategies, reproductive organs dressed in pigment and perfume, nature's quiet solution to a problem: how to bring the right creatures close enough to carry life onward. And so, slowly, petal by petal, they adapted, not for beauty, not for us, but for attraction, for guidance, for connection. And the colors they chose became a kind of language, a language spoken in light. Some flowers chose red, loud and urgent, signaling birds with long beaks and fast hearts. Others turned to yellow, bright and beckoning, mimicking the sun itself to pull insects from their paths. But many turned to softer shades: pale lavender, dusty rose, silvery white, muted peach. These were not the colors of warning. These were the colors of calm. And the creatures who visited them came gently, lingering longer, hovering with care. Pollination did not require panic. It required stillness. The soft colors evolved for many reasons. Pale petals stood out in shade. Soft hues reflected light in twilight hours. For nocturnal pollinators, like moths and certain beetles, too much brightness would have confused. So flowers began to speak in hushes. A moonflower unfolding in silence. A night blooming, serious, glowing, pale ivory under stars. Even in darkness, the world found ways to soothe through color. And scent, too, joined this language. Often the gentlest flowers smelled the sweetest, not cloying or heavy, but soft, like memory, like morning, like rain. Together, color and scent became a lullaby for the senses, a way of drawing creatures near without alarm, a way of saying, "You may land here. You are welcome." Humans arrived late to this story, but we carried with us the same instincts. We stopped at fields of lavender not just because they were pretty, but because something in us paused, something in our breath slowed. The color, the pattern, the sway, it all spoke to the oldest parts of us, the parts that knew safety when we felt it. And so we began to gather flowers, to bring them home, to press them in books, to give them as gifts, not for survival anymore, but for comfort. And we didn't just gather the bright ones. We reached for the softest ones too: baby's breath, dried grasses, pale blue forget-me-nots, the flowers that did not demand attention but stayed in the mind, in the heart, in the quiet corners of rooms. We tucked them behind ears, placed them on pillows, laid them gently on graves. Their presence did not interrupt life. It moved alongside it. In this way, flowers taught us to feel without explanation, to see softness as something worthy. Their fragility did not diminish them. It deepened them. And somewhere along the way, we began to mimic them, in fabric, in fragrance, in design. We surrounded ourselves with floral prints, not just for decoration, but for the feeling they carried, the sense that something delicate could survive, could bloom, could bring stillness just by being there. Scientists now understand more about this feeling. Exposure to flowers, even briefly, lowers blood pressure and stress levels. Rooms with fresh flowers improve mood and memory. In hospitals, patients recover faster when flowers are placed nearby. It is not magic. It is biology responding to shape, color, scent, all the things flowers have evolved to offer over millions of years. But perhaps it's more than just biology. Perhaps there is something emotional passed down between petals and perception, A quiet story written not in books but in gardens. Flowers remind us of time. They remind us of cycles, of blooming and fading, of returning and resting. And in their softest moments, in the curve of a petal, in the fade of pink to white, they remind us that gentleness is not weakness. It is nature choosing not to fight. Now imagine a field at dawn. Dew clings to the leaves. The air is cool and the sky is pale, just waking. All around you flowers begin to open, not loudly, not suddenly, but with grace. Their colors are not all vivid. Some are soft like breath, like lace, like lullabies. And in their presence something in you eases, because here in this field the world is not trying to prove anything. It is just being, just blooming. And maybe this is the greatest gift flowers give us, the reminder that not all beauty is bold, that not all power is loud, that sometimes the most enduring thing is the quiet bloom, the choice to open even when no one is watching, even when the wind is cold, even when the world has been harsh. Flowers do not bloom to be admired. They bloom because it is time, because they are ready. And in that blooming, without force, without demand, they soothe the earth and us. Let us wander further into the world of flowers, where evolution stitched tenderness into form, and time pressed fragrance into memory. The story of how flowers came to soothe is not one of sudden change, but of patient unfolding. It is a story rooted in biology, yet woven with the quiet fabric of emotion. Because somewhere between petal and perception, a connection grew, between the softness of the bloom and the softness it stirred in the observer. Inside each flower is a small miracle of design. Sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils, all arranged not for show but for function. Yet nature, ever the quiet artist, found ways to turn this necessity into grace. Petals became curved like cradles, not just to shield but to welcome. Stamens dusted with pollen stood not just to reproduce but to offer. The very architecture of a flower mirrors kindness, open, receptive, generous. Somewhere in the evolution of angiosperms, the flowering plant's color became more than visibility. It became emotion, not for the plant but for those who noticed it. Humans did not just see flowers, we began to feel them, and that shift, slow and invisible, changed our world forever. The lavender fields, the cherry blossoms, the meadows thick with daisies, they did more than decorate. They taught us how to be gentle with our eyes, with our breath, with one another. There is an elegance to how certain flowers unfold. Consider the lotus, blooming not in pristine ponds but in mud. Its petals rise slowly, unstained, toward the light. In many cultures it became a symbol not of luxury but of quiet perseverance. Or think of the morning glory, blooming only at dawn, closing before the heat of the day, its soft blues and purples catching the last moments of cool air. These flowers do not beg to be seen. They offer themselves with discretion and then rest. In nature, these rhythms serve purpose. The timing of a bloom aligns with the habits of a pollinator. The scent intensifies in the stillness of night. The angle of a petal changes with the path of the sun. But over time, humans began to reflect these rhythms. We started to rise with blossoms. We began to mark seasons not with clocks but with petals, crocuses in spring, sunflowers in summer, chrysanthemums in fall. Flowers became the quiet timekeepers of our lives. And with each bloom we marked something else, emotion. Joy, sorrow, love, apology, hope, all found voice through flowers, not in words but in presence. A daffodil in a jar said welcome. A single white lily said goodbye. A bundle of peonies said I'm sorry. Over generations, these associations deepened. The language of flowers, once literal in its attraction of insects, became metaphorical in its connection to human hearts. It's no surprise, then, that in times of grief we reach for flowers. In hospitals, in homes, in the aftermath of loss, petals arrive, not to fix but to hold. Their scent does not erase sadness, but it softens its edges. Their colors do not distract, but they remind. They remind us that life, too, unfolds, fades, and returns. They remind us that beauty can exist beside sorrow, that comfort does not have to speak. And in love, we return to flowers again and again, not for extravagance but for symbolism. A single wildflower plucked from a field and tucked behind an ear says more than polished words ever could. A bouquet, thoughtfully gathered, says, I noticed, I remembered, I chose these for you. There is an intimacy in flowers, a way of seeing without needing to be seen in return. Even in solitude, flowers keep company. A plant on a desk, a pot of herbs on a windowsill, a blossom blooming quietly in the corner of a room, each becomes a companion in stillness. They grow without comment. They unfold without expectation. And somehow, just by being there, they change the space. They ask nothing, yet give a sense of presence, of continuity, of care. Scientific studies now support what instinct has always known. People surrounded by flowers report higher levels of happiness. Their cortisol levels decrease. Their capacity for empathy increases. These effects are not limited to any one culture or age group. They are universal, because flowers at their core are gentle. And that gentleness speaks directly to the nervous system, offering a balm against the harshness of the world. But perhaps what is most beautiful about flowers is their temporariness. They do not last, their petals fall, their stems bend, their fragrance fades, and in that fragility we are reminded to pay attention, to notice while they are here, to feel what they stir before they vanish. This is not sadness, it is sacredness. A sacredness that says, even things that do not endure can still matter, can still comfort, can still soothe. Now imagine a path lined with blooming dogwoods. Their pale pink petals scatter in the breeze, catching sunlight for a moment before falling to the earth. You walk slowly, the petals brushing against your skin, your thoughts quieting with each step. There is no destination, only the walk, only the hush of petals, the hush of green, the hush of everything opening and closing in perfect rhythm. And in this moment you understand. Flowers did not choose to soothe us. They simply were. But in witnessing their softness, in allowing ourselves to feel what their colors and shapes evoke, we were soothed anyway. Not because we were told to feel calm, but because calmness arrived uninvited and stayed. This is the legacy of flowers, not as ornament, not as display, but as presence, as quiet teachers of softness, as reminders that gentleness has always been part of survival, that blooming, even when brief, even when unnoticed, can still leave something behind. Now let us settle into the closing of this story, where the last petals begin to fall, not with sadness, but with peace, where the rhythm of blooming slows and the silence between colors becomes part of the message. Because flowers in their brief and beautiful lives remind us that comfort often arrives in the simplest gestures, in stillness, in scent, in shade. They never needed words to be understood. They never needed to last forever to matter. Their softness was the message. Their fading was the wisdom. In every garden there is a quiet choreography. The opening of buds, the tilting of stems toward the light, the lean of blossoms into morning air. Each motion is small and yet profound. A sunflower tracks the sun not in grand arcs but in quiet degrees. A daisy closes its face to night not with drama but with ease. These are gestures of trust, of letting the world be what it is without resistance. And in watching flowers do this, we learn something about how to live. There are flowers that bloom only once. Some take years before revealing their face to the sky. And when they do not ask for applause. They simply bloom, offer their beauty, and then disappear. The night-blooming jasmine, the ghost orchid, the rare corpse flower whose scent may not soothe but whose singular appearance leaves a lasting imprint. Even the strangest of flowers, the ones that smell of decay or carry no color at all, hold meaning. Because they teach us that there is room in nature for every kind of expression, every kind of softness, even those that come in unexpected forms. And what about the flowers we press between pages, the ones we keep long after they've dried? Their color fades, their texture crumbles, and yet they are not thrown away. They are kept for what they meant: a moment, a walk, a goodbye, a beginning, a gesture too gentle to name but too meaningful to forget. We hold on to them not for their bloom but for their presence in a particular hour. That's what flowers do. They hold space. Even when they are gone, the space they touched still remembers. Think of the ways we honor with flowers. We lay them on graves not because they will last but because they mirror the impermanence of life. We place them in hospital rooms not to cure but to remind someone they are not alone. We carry them down aisles, pin them to jackets, scatter them into oceans. In each case, flowers stand in for words we cannot find. They speak in color. They speak in silence. And sometimes we become the flower. In grief, we curl inward like a closing bud. In joy, we open without thought like petals reaching toward a warm sky. In solitude, we wait like seeds underground. In love, we bloom without needing to be told how. These are not metaphors. These are motions written into our biology, mirrored in the world around us. Flowers are not symbols we chose, they are patterns we remembered. Even in our cities made of glass and steel, we bring flowers in. We place them on windowsills, paint them on walls, wear them stitched into fabric. Not because we need them to function, but because they remind us of what lies beneath function feeling. Flowers ask nothing but attention, and in giving it, we return to something quieter in ourselves, something that knows how to breathe without rushing. There is science here, yes, photosynthesis, petal symmetry, pollinator pathways, but beneath all of it is something that science can describe but never fully explain, the way flowers make us feel seen, even though they are not looking, the way they remind us to soften even when the world feels hard, the way they continue to bloom again and again, regardless of who notices. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Flowers do not bloom to impress. They bloom because it is their nature, because the seed was ready, because the conditions aligned, because something deep within said now. And maybe we are not so different. Maybe we too are allowed to open without justification, to unfold without purpose, to be soft without permission. So let the flowers remain with you, not just in the garden or the vase, but in your mind. Let them grow there quietly, coloring your thoughts with patience and light. Let them remind you that beauty can be brief and still be complete. That presence does not require permanence. That comfort can live in the shape of a petal, the curve of a stem, the hush of a field at dusk. And tonight, as your breath slows and your thoughts settle, imagine a meadow without wind, every bloom still and full. The air is heavy with the scent of rest. The light is warm but not bright. Around you the flowers do not move. They do not call. They simply exist. And in their stillness they soothe. They say in their own silent way, you are part of this. You belong to this rhythm. You are allowed to rest. This is what flowers chose, not to dominate, not to demand, but to open, to offer, to soften the space around them and trust that someone someday would feel it. And you feel it now, the hush, the hold, the comfort of something blooming just once, just now, just enough. Before they fluttered in gardens, before their wings carried sunlight like stained glass, butterflies lived quiet, hidden lives. They were not always creatures of flight. They began as eggs no larger than a dot, tucked beneath leaves, silent and still. Their first experience of the world was darkness and softness, the curve of a leaf, the shelter of shade, the damp air of morning. There was no color in those early moments, only growth, only waiting. And then came the caterpillar, small and unseen, a creature of hunger and instinct, winding its way across green surfaces, feeding on the generosity of plants. It did not yet know what it would become. It only knew how to move, to grow, to shed the skin that could no longer hold it. There is nothing colorful about a caterpillar's life, only repetition, only a quiet rhythm of survival. But something began to shift when stillness arrived. When the caterpillar curled into itself, hung upside down in patient silence and wrapped its body in silk. The chrysalis, a small case of stillness, what seemed like sleep was actually transformation. Inside, cells dissolved and reformed. Mouthparts became wings. Legs became thinner. Eyes became different. The caterpillar became less itself and more something new. And inside that hush, the first hints of color were born. When butterflies emerge, their wings are soft, wet, folded tight against their bodies. They must wait again, motionless, while air and time open their wings like paper flowers. And then when they finally rise into the sky, the colors arrive with them, not as defense, not as camouflage, but as expression. The soft blue of a morpho wing, the pale green of a luna moth, the gentle cream of a cabbage white. These were not the colors of fear. These were the colors of grace. Not all butterflies use boldness to survive. Many choose subtlety. pastel wings that blend with sky and flower, patterns that mimic petals, edges that look like leaves. This is not a shout. This is a whisper to the world, I am here but I mean no harm, and in that gentleness they are allowed to remain. Humans notice this, we always have. Children reach for butterflies not to catch them but to follow. Gardeners plant milkweed and dill not just for beauty but to invite winged visitors into their space. And when butterflies come, they are welcomed. Their presence is not startling, it is soothing. A flicker of color, a movement of light, a message of life continuing softly. And their colors, so often pale and calming, have been absorbed into us, into fabrics and paintings, into lullabies and jewelry. The soft blues and lavenders and dusty pinks of butterfly wings are echoed in clothes made for comfort, in rooms designed for rest. We wear their patterns without knowing. We choose their tones without asking why. But somewhere deep inside, we remember, these are the colors of safety. Even in science, butterflies teach us about peace. Their flight is not linear, not strategic. It is a drifting, a wandering, and yet they reach their destination. Monarchs cross continents, painted ladies ride the wind. Their migration is not fast, but it is faithful. They do not rush. They trust the air to carry them, and in that trust they teach us that gentleness can travel far. Their wings, though delicate, are engineered with strength. Scales that shimmer not because of pigment but because of structure, microscopic ridges that bend light into color. This iridescence is not designed to dazzle. It is a byproduct of biology, of evolution's patient work. And yet it creates beauty. Not loud beauty. Subtle, flickering, changeable beauty, like a memory seen from different angles. And so the butterfly, once a crawling hunger, becomes a floating hush. And its color, once hidden, becomes a language, not of warning but of calm, not of battle but of presence. And every time it lands on a flower, every time it pauses on a leaf, the world pauses with it, just for a moment, just long enough to remember what softness looks like. Now imagine a warm meadow in late spring. The grass sways, the flowers nod, and above them butterflies drift like pieces of the sky come down to dance. They do not speak, they do not command. They simply move lightly, gently, fully. And in their flight something in you loosens, your shoulders drop, your eyes slow. You feel not the need to act, but the permission to be. And maybe that is what butterflies chose. Not only to change, but to show us how change can be soft, how transformation does not need to be violent, how color can be a comfort, how the quietest creatures can still move the air around us, still guide us gently towards stillness, still say, without sound, you are safe to rest. Let's drift deeper into the butterfly's gentle world, where color is not only survival but language, where softness itself becomes a strategy, where the most delicate wings carry the deepest truths, about transformation, about presence, about the quiet safety of being beautiful without asking for attention. In every butterfly's wing, there is a story not just of flight, but of calm, not just of escape, but of staying visible without being loud. In this, they teach us how to exist in peace with the world around us. The evolution of butterfly coloration is a tale of balance, not aggression. While some butterflies use mimicry to ward off predators, echoing the bright, bold patterns of more toxic species, others evolved in the opposite direction. They chose softness. They leaned into pastels, into translucency, into shapes that blur into leaf and light. The pale green of the brimstone, the muted orange of the comma. These are not the colors of war. They are the colors of quiet continuity, of fitting into the background while still being fully present. Scientists call this crypsis, an adaptation where color and pattern help an animal blend into its surroundings. But there is something more emotional in it, too. When we watch a butterfly disappear into the shade of a bush, or notice too late that one was resting just inches away on a bark-textured wing, there's a flicker of humility, a reminder that not all presence announces itself, that the most peaceful things often wait for us to slow down before they appear. And within that stillness, butterflies have created whole systems of gentle survival. They regulate their body temperature by basking, opening their wings to sunlight in the early hours, catching warmth without chase. They fold themselves at rest, concealing bright markings with muted undersides, allowing rest without exposure. Even their feeding is quiet, a long, coiled proboscis reaching softly into flowers, sipping nectar without damaging a single petal. There is a respectful choreography to how they interact with the world, a partnership, not a conquest. Humans, too, have long looked to butterflies as symbols of something softer, something sacred. In many cultures, they are tied to the soul. In Japan, they represent departed spirits, arriving briefly to comfort the living. In ancient Greece, the word for soul and butterfly was the same, asterisk psyche. In Mexico, monarch butterflies return each autumn, coinciding with Day of the Dead celebrations. Their arrival is not feared, it is welcomed. A flutter of memory, of presence, of quiet love that outlasts form. And perhaps we feel this because we recognize something of ourselves in them. The transformation from caterpillar to butterfly mirrors the emotional evolutions within us. Times when we retreat unsure to reshape ourselves in silence. Times when we emerge uncertain but whole, more open than before. The butterfly does not rush its change. It breaks itself down in order to become something gentler. Not fiercer, gentler. That too is power. In the design world, butterfly patterns and shades are used to evoke trust, ease, inspiration. A nursery decorated in soft butterfly prints creates a space of comfort. A book of poetry with wings on its cover promises stillness, not speed. In these choices, we see that the butterfly has become not just a symbol but a guide. Its very shape, its motion, its color, all point us toward gentler ways of being. There's a scientific basis for this, too. Studies show that watching butterfly flight lowers stress levels. The randomness, the grace, the lack of urgency, it invites our nervous system to slow, to mirror that same unhurried path, to loosen our grip on precision and move like wind-drawn wings. People who walk in butterfly gardens report feeling more grounded, more present, more at ease. This is not illusion. It is biology responding to beauty that does not pressure. And then there's the miracle of fragility. Butterfly wings are covered in scales, each one thinner than a strand of hair. They can be damaged by a single touch. And yet these wings carry them across oceans, across countries, across lifespans shorter than a season. This balance of delicacy and endurance is part of what makes them so moving. They remind us that gentleness is not weakness, that something light can still carry far. Even in art and poetry, butterflies return again and again as messengers of grace. Rilke wrote of them as souls fluttering toward light. Dickinson called them a fitting thing for the summer afternoon. In every language, there are metaphors that tie the butterfly to healing, to becoming, to the beauty of being exactly as you are, without needing to harden first. And still, they do not ask to be admired. They land on fingers, on flowers, on windowsills, and then vanish. Not because they are shy, but because they are free. Their time is short, their lives brief. But in those brief moments, they carry something no other creature does: the ability to turn silence into color, air into path, stillness into meaning. Now imagine a forest edge at sunset. The trees breathe shadows. The light falls in slow golden slants, and from the edge of a leaf a butterfly lifts. It catches the last warmth of the sun on its wings and floats, not toward a goal, but toward wherever the air is softest. You watch, and for a moment everything inside you quiets. You do not need to follow. You simply feel what it feels: lightness, presence, calm. This is how butterflies painted safety. Not with shields or spikes, not with sound or strength, but with softness that survived, with color that comforted, with motion that reminded us how to move through the world without disturbing it too much, with wings that say, even now, be still, be gentle, you are safe to become. Now let us float toward the end of this story, as gently as a butterfly settling on a quiet branch. Not to conclude, but to rest. Because the story of how butterflies painted safety is not one of loud moments or sudden truths. It is a story written in wings, in softness, in the hush between movements. It's a reminder that not all survival is sharp-edged. That sometimes, the most lasting presence is the one that never forces itself into the foreground, but drifts nearby, just close enough to comfort. In the butterfly's brief life, everything happens slowly and yet in perfect time. It begins in stillness, becomes hunger, transforms into silence again, and finally becomes air. It does not rage against the cocoon. It does not cry when the wings come. It simply waits, trusts, emerges. And when it flies, it does so with no noise at all. Only motion, only light. And that silence becomes its strength. We live in a world that often asks us to harden, to armor ourselves in certainty, in boldness, in speed. But the butterfly offers another path, a way of moving through the world lightly, of trusting delicate things, of being open enough to feel the breeze and let it carry you instead of always trying to push through. This is not avoidance. This is a different kind of strength, one that comes from knowing how to yield. Even their patterns teach this. Look closely at a butterfly's wings and you'll see stories written in symmetry. Circles meant to confuse, veins meant to camouflage, iridescent glows that shift with each change in the light. But beyond their function, these designs hold something more, a kind of sacred geometry. A reminder that beauty can be quiet and still matter, that attention to detail can be its own form of love. And when butterflies rest, they remind us how to pause. Wings closed, still as paper fans, they disappear into the world around them. They are not always flying, they are not always visible, but they are always present, always part of the balance. Their lives are not measured in noise or achievement, but in the grace of how they inhabit space. We too can learn to rest like that, without guilt, without apology, just being here fully. There is something eternal about their softness. We see them in childhood, chasing them with open hands. We see them in art as symbols of freedom and hope. We see them in dreams, arriving at moments of deep emotion, messengers without message, simply fluttering through. And when we see them in the real world, in the garden, on the breeze, something inside us shifts. The world feels kinder, if only for a moment. Even the way they die is gentle, often alone, tucked beneath a leaf, their wings closing one final time. No fight, no flare, just stillness, just return. And in that quiet end there is no tragedy, only completion. They have done what they came to do. They have brought beauty into the world and asked nothing in return. That is not loss, that is offering. And though their bodies vanish, their presence does not. A single wing caught in the grass, a memory of blue passing through a summer afternoon, a shape pressed into the pattern of our stories. They remain, not just in biology, but in feeling. In the way we decorate, the way we grieve, the way we imagine ourselves becoming more than we were. So tonight, as you lie still beneath the hush of evening, let the butterfly return to your thoughts, not as something fragile, but as something whole. Let its colors drift behind your closed eyes. Let its flight become your breath. Let its softness become your permission to slow. You are not behind, you are not late, you are not broken because you need rest. You are unfolding, like wings from a cocoon, like color from stillness, like flight from silence. You are allowed to be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to be soft and strong at the same time. And when the morning comes again and the light moves across your room, let yourself imagine wings, yours, quiet, bright, steady. Let yourself believe in transformation that does not require violence. Let yourself trust the power of softness, of drifting, of waiting, of rising when the time is right. Because butterflies did not paint safety with power. They painted it with presence, with the kind of beauty that doesn't ask to be earned, with the kind of calm that spreads like sunlight through translucent wings. Close your eyes now. The wings are still here. The hush is still with you. And in this moment you are safe to rest. Long before paint, before fabric, before the first brush ever dipped into pigment, color existed in silence. It moved across the sky in shifting hues, bloomed inside minerals deep within the earth, shimmered on the skin of beetles and birds, and rippled through oceans without needing a single name. It was velvet in the way it touched, soft, slow, barely seen until you stopped to feel it. Color was not a thing to possess. It was an atmosphere, a presence, a language spoken without words. And this language, like velvet, never shouted. It whispered, it invited, it spread itself across surfaces gently, waiting for someone to notice. The human eye, so often drawn to brightness and motion, began to soften its gaze, to linger on the tones that asked for patience. On the blush of stone, the clouded blue of dusk, the green that darkened just before rain. We learned to read the world not only in shapes or shadows, but in temperature and tone. Color became emotion, and emotion, in turn, became memory. Velvet is more than a texture. It is the sensation of depth, of richness without weight. In the same way some colors carry a velvet quality. They do not push forward, they sink inward. Consider the deep burgundy of ripe cherries, the midnight indigo of distant sky, the softest gray just before morning arrives. These are not colors that demand attention. They draw you in, one quiet layer at a time. They are the kind of hues that seem to carry history, even when seen for the first time. The human eye can distinguish millions of colors, and yet it is the soft ones, the velvety ones, that we return to when we seek rest. Designers fill bedrooms with muted mauves, dusty blues, creamy taupes, not for fashion but because the body understands something unspoken. These tones allow the mind to exhale. They offer no threat. They mimic shadows, skin, stone, fog, natural things that ask nothing of us. Their presence is not decoration. It is reassurance. We may not realize it, but we often choose these colors when we feel most tender. When writing in journals, we reach for sepia pens. When selecting candles, we gravitate toward pale amber glass. Even in food, steamed milk, oatmeal, soft cheeses, we seek tones that are neither loud nor bright but comforting. There is velvet even in taste, even in temperature. And it always follows the same rule: nothing sharp, nothing sudden, just ease. Color in nature has long followed this same path. While bright colors shout danger or attraction, the velvet tones exist in safe spaces, in forest floors covered in moss, in the underbellies of clouds, in the soft feathers of sleeping birds. Evolution favored these hues not for their drama, but for their ability to soothe. Camouflage is only part of it. These colors also signal this is a place of rest. Even in human tradition, we find the velvet language of color woven into ritual. Monks wear robes dyed in ochre and saffron, not gold, not orange, but something in between, something calm. Prayer flags fade over time into soft pastels, and still they flutter with meaning. Ancient tapestries, worn by centuries of air and hand, take on a muted tone that feels almost sacred. We cherish the fade, not just the brightness, because velvet color, like velvet cloth, deepens with time. Art tells the story too. Painters across centuries learned to layer their pigments to create that sense of softness. The sfumato technique of Da Vinci, the gauzy landscapes of Turner, the candlelit scenes of Vermeer, all understood that emotion lives not at the edges but in the in-between, in the shadowed blush of cheek, in the gray that is quite blue, in the skin tone warmed by lamplight. Velvet, again and again, not shouted, felt. Even our language carries this understanding. We say a voice is velvety when it soothes. A night is velvet dark when it comforts without fear. A dress is dusty rose. A room is moss green. A sky is storm soft. None of these words are about color alone. They are about how color makes us feel. They are about softness as a way of being. They are about safety without silence. And there is science quietly supporting all of this. When our eyes rest on muted tones, our brains release fewer stress hormones, our heart rate steadies, our breath deepens. We feel, without knowing why, that we can stay, that we can trust the space. This is not a conscious choice. It is the nervous system remembering the language of color, the velvet tongue that says, "You are safe here." Now picture a library in the early morning before anyone arrives. The walls are lined in books whose covers have aged into soft browns and greens. Light filters through high windows, not bright but diffused. The floor is warm wood. The chairs are worn velvet. And there is color everywhere, but none of it screams. All of it hums. And in that hum you feel yourself return to something slower, something steadier, something you almost forgot how to feel. This is the velvet language of color. The way a room speaks before anyone enters. The way a sky prepares you for rain without ever announcing it. The way your eyes close a little more easily in soft light. It is a language we knew before we had names for anything. And in that knowing, we find rest. Let us drift further into the folds of color's quiet language, where tones speak not to the intellect but to the body, the skin, the breath. The velvet tones do not persuade, they welcome. They do not instruct, they hold. Their purpose is not to impress but to surround. Like a shawl laid gently across shoulders, they do their work without need for praise. And perhaps this is why we crave them in times of transition, in moments of rest, in spaces meant not for show but for staying. In architecture, this language becomes a living shelter. Rooms painted in cool grays, moss greens, and dusky lavenders invite slow movement. Hallways lined in warm neutrals quiet footsteps before they fall. Soft light, filtered through linen curtains, bathes the walls in shifting tones that change with the hour. And in that change, we find rhythm. We find ourselves aligning, not with the loud clock of industry, but with the quiet clock of light. This is how velvet color teaches. Not through contrast, but through continuity. Interior designers have long understood that color affects how people behave. In spaces meant for focus, soft blues and muted sage greens are chosen. In bedrooms, warm beiges, pale rusts, and earthy creams settle the mind before sleep. In therapy rooms, even the art on the walls follows this palette. Soft lines, subdued shapes, matte finishes. Velvet color avoids glare. It never insists on being noticed. It simply stays, steady and forgiving, like something you forgot you needed until it returned. This instinct reaches back into childhood. Think of the comfort items we hold close, the blanket, the toy, the worn sweater. Often they are washed into tones that began bright but faded over time, and in that fading they became more cherished, not less. We associate softness with memory. We hold on to the things that grew quieter, not louder. Even now, when we seek comfort, we rarely reach for neon or shine. We reach for the objects and colors that feel lived in, that feel like they already know how to listen. Color's emotional resonance also lives in the stories we tell ourselves. A novel may describe a room as bathed in dusty rose, and we feel the romance before a single kiss. A film may tint a scene in steel blue, and we know it's a moment of stillness. A painting may layer ochre upon burnt sienna, and our eyes follow the warmth without ever being told where to look. In each of these, color works not as decoration, but as atmosphere, as emotional terrain. The fashion world, too, follows this silent thread. Clothes in muted palettes offer safety in plain sight. A taupe coat, a soft lilac scarf, a cream sweater worn at dusk, these garments do not seek to stand out. They seek to blend gently into the hour. And in doing so, they offer the wearer a kind of permission, to move without spectacle, to be present without performance, to feel rather than display. Velvet color does not drape the body, it wraps it. In nature, these tones offer their own invitation. The undersides of mushrooms pale and hidden, the flanks of deer blending into dusk, the layers of sandstone worn by time into gentle striations. These are the places where the earth itself speaks in velvet, where softness is not weakness but adaptation, where the landscape does not overwhelm the senses but slowly opens them. This is the palette of endurance, of coexistence, of peace. Even animals recognize these tones. Studies have shown that domestic pets respond more calmly in environments with soft, natural color palettes. Birds choose nesting sites where surroundings are less saturated. Insects find rest on petals that match their wings. The velvet language is not human alone. It speaks to life that knows how to hide, how to rest, how to trust. It is the color of spaces that say, "You are welcome to stay as long as you need." We might think color is only about vision, but it touches everything. It changes how we taste, how we sleep, how we heal. Patients in recovery rooms painted in soft tones experience less anxiety. Meals served on pale plates feel more nourishing. Dreams in rooms with warm lighting take on a slower rhythm. Velvet color seeps into our rhythms until we no longer notice, and that's how it works best. It's not meant to be a spectacle. It's meant to be a whisper that never leaves. Now picture a quiet evening in a room where every surface seems to breathe. The walls are clay soft, the light is golden and slow. A cup of tea steams beside you. There is no art demanding attention, no fabric that gleams. Everything is hushed. Everything is warm. You sit not because the room is beautiful, but because the room makes you feel beautiful. In your skin, in your breath, in your stillness. This is the gift of velvet color. It reflects back the parts of you that are most at peace. And maybe in the end, that's what this language is for. Not to dazzle, not to transform, but to remind. That gentleness is enough. That presence is enough. That a color doesn't need to shine to be seen. That you don't need to perform to belong. In a world that often rushes and brightens and sharpens, velvet color remains a soft place to land. A place that holds the shape of quiet and says simply, stay. Now let us bring this story to its soft, deliberate close, the way dusk folds into night, without announcement, without haste. The velvet language of color has spoken, not through brightness or sharpness, but through steady presence. It has moved through stone and fabric, sky and skin, light and silence. And as we return to stillness, we begin to understand that this language was never meant to be learned. It was always inside us, waiting to be remembered. There is a kind of memory that doesn't belong to events but to feelings. A room you once entered and didn't want to leave. A face you saw bathed in candlelight. A path through trees where every leaf seemed dusted in softness. You may not recall the date or the name or even the season, but you remember the way the world felt against your skin. And almost always there was color, not loud, not vivid, but velvet, muted, gentle, safe. In our final moments of each day, we often return to these colors. We dim the lights. We turn off the screens. We pull close the blankets in warm grays and beige. We let our homes turn soft again, returning to the hues that say rest, that say pause, that say nothing is expected of you now. This is no accident. Our bodies seek velvet colors as if they are the language of sleep itself, as if they have been here longer than words. Even the body in its natural state carries this softness. The inside of the wrist, the flush of cheek, the curve of shoulder under low light. These are not just anatomical facts. These are colors that soothe, that invite closeness, that reflect the gentler sides of being alive. We do not paint ourselves in velvet tones. We are already made of them. And still, we return to recreate this softness again and again. In pottery glazed with cloudy blues and chalky whites, in journals bound in faded green linen, in curtains dyed with tea, books aged to amber, photographs that time has gently bleached. We cherish these tones not because they are old, but because they remind us of time lived slowly, of hours that asked nothing of us, of days when we moved like light through fog. There's a reason why artists and designers keep returning to these palettes. A reason why painters layer grays into purples, add ochre into white, blur edges until they feel like breath. It's because velvet color makes space. It makes room for emotion. It lets grief be quiet, joy be gentle, and reflection linger without becoming heavy. It allows the soul to stretch out without bracing. Even the seasons speak this language. Spring arrives not in neon but in blush, in the faint green haze on trees, in the lavender breath of early bloom. Autumn whispers in rust and maroon, in the cool blue of shorter evenings. Even winter, with all its pale hush, is wrapped in soft silvers and worn creams. These aren't just palettes. They are lullabies in color, carried on the wind. And when we close our eyes, these are the tones that stay. The dreams that soothe us don't come in primary hues. They unfold in velvet, in faded pinks, sea glass greens, candlelit ambers. The brain, when resting, returns to these shades as if they are its natural language. Even memory seems to soften in color when it is kind. Even pain, when fully felt and healed, is remembered in soft light. So tonight, as you return to your own quiet space, let color do its ancient work. Let the walls around you be gentle. Let the fabrics near you wrap without weight. Let the air itself feel hushed by tone. Let the colors of your space, not their names or numbers but their feelings, remind you that you are safe, that you are allowed to exhale. And if there is no color in your room, close your eyes and find them there. Picture the velvet sky just before rain, the shadowed gold of late afternoon, the brown of soil after it has been turned, the gray-blue of morning seen from under blankets. These are the colors that will hold you. These are the colors that do not rush. Let them say what they have always said, that beauty does not have to shine. That stillness can speak louder than spectacle. That softness is not the absence of strength, it is its most enduring form. Close your eyes now. The world has dimmed. The velvet has returned. Let it rest against your breath. Let it shape your sleep. Let it remind you that gentleness is not a luxury, it is your original language. And tonight it is here, wrapping around you without a single sound. Long before the stars were counted, before fire had a name, before anyone gave the sun a place in myth, there was light. And not just light as we know it now, not the harsh fluorescence of bulbs or the blinding midday glare, but tender light, gentle light, the kind that arrived slowly and left without a sound, the kind that moved across water like a sigh or touched the face of stone in the early hours of morning. Before anything lived, light had already begun its quiet shaping of the world. It began with stars, with the soft birth of fusion deep inside the darkness of space. Light was a byproduct, a breath. It scattered into the void without direction, without reason. But as it moved, it began to meet matter. And when it touched the surfaces of planets, of dust, of atmosphere, something extraordinary began: color, reflection, warmth. Light was no longer invisible. It had found a way to be felt. Earth was lucky. Wrapped in atmosphere, circled by moon and tilted just so, it caught light in a way that made it soft. Sunrise didn't blaze, it whispered. Sunset didn't vanish, it lingered. Even moonlight, just a reflection of something else, felt like its own kind of mercy. These were the earliest gifts of light, not brilliance but calmness, not intensity but invitation. And when life began, tiny cells in shallow seas moving toward warmth, they were drawn by light. Not all light, but the right kind, the gentle kind, the kind filtered through water, through clouds, through leaves. Too much brightness burned, too much darkness starved, but the in-between, the tender spectrum sustained. Photoreceptors evolved not just to detect, but to prefer. Life was built not only by light, but by soft light. Plants grew in this balance. Leaves unfolded to catch dawn's first glow. Roots dug downward while stems reached toward the shimmer. The color green was born from this interaction, not by accident but as a result of what was left behind. Chlorophyll absorbed the reds and blues, but the green remained, bounced back into the air. We see that green not because the plant needs it, but because it does not. And in that excess, in that rejection, we found beauty. That's what light does. It leaves behind color like footprints, like echoes. Animals followed. Eyes developed to see light not just as presence or absence, but as variation. Birds saw ultraviolet to trace the edges of feathers. Mammals sensed the shift of day to night. The gentle arc of the sun told them when to wake, when to rest. This rhythm, circadian, ancient, unspoken, became embedded in every cell. Light became time, not a clock on the wall, but a feeling in the skin, in the breath, in the bones. Humans, too, were shaped by this light. We did not evolve under neon or glare. We evolved under firelight, under the muted tones of overcast skies, under the golden hush of evening. Our skin responds to warm tones. Our eyes are calmed by blue shadows. Even now, in rooms filled with artificial brightness, we seek the corner where the light softens, the place where a lamp glows like a window at dusk. That instinct is not aesthetic, it is ancestral. And light has always meant more than vision. It has meant emotion, the light of a candle during prayer, the light of a lantern on a long walk home, the light that flickers across a loved one's face as they tell you something true. These are not just illuminations, they are companions. They shape how we feel, how we remember, how we heal. Because light, in its tenderest form, does not just reveal the world, it reveals us to ourselves. Even the stories we told were soaked in this gentleness. Gods of sun and moon were not always fierce. Some were protectors, watchers, bringers of slow joy. We placed the sun in the center of our myth not just for its power, but for its patience. It rose every morning. It warmed us without demand. And when it set, it left behind the blush of pink, the gold of parting, the softness that said, "You can rest now." Artists learned this language early. They painted light not as a beam, but as a veil. The folds of a dress lit by morning, the curve of a shoulder touched by golden hour. They chase the way light falls, not the source of it, because it's not the brightness that moves us, it's the way the light touches, the way it wraps, the way it makes everything seem more itself. And so tender light became part of how we live. We build homes to catch it. We arrange furniture beneath it. We rise with it. We grow things in it. We say soft lighting when we mean safety. We light candles when we mean presence. We turn on lamps not just to see, but to feel. And each time we do, we are repeating something ancient. We are asking light to be kind. Now imagine a room just before dawn. The sky outside is barely changing. Inside, the windows hold shadows like blankets, and slowly the walls begin to shift. First gray, then lavender, then gold. Nothing speaks, nothing moves, but light has arrived. And in its arrival, everything softens. Not because of heat, not because of intensity, but because of tone, because of tenderness. Because the world once again is becoming visible, and that visibility brings peace. This is the evolution of light, not toward more, but toward better, toward deeper, toward quieter, toward tones that do not dazzle but hold. Because the most powerful light is not the one that blinds. It's the one that touches everything gently and makes nothing afraid. Let us wander further into this light, tracing its quiet journey through time, not as scientists chasing particles, but as soft witnesses to its ever-deepening grace. Light has always changed, but not in its essence. What changed was its relationship to life. As organisms grew more complex, so too did their sensitivity to light's touch. No longer just a signal of day or night, light began to sculpt behavior, guide emotion, and shape entire ecosystems. And it did so gently, always gently. Inside the human body, there is a clock that listens to light. Not the kind you wind or plug in, but a biological rhythm curled deep in the brain. It listens for dawn and dusk. It senses brightness and shadow. It releases chemicals based on whether the sky is warm with morning or blue with afternoon or dim with evening. This clock does not care about time zones. It cares about tenderness. It responds to soft transitions. Harsh light confuses it. Gentle light soothes it. And so, without realizing it, we are always negotiating with light, asking it to guide us through waking, eating, thinking, resting, sleeping. But this negotiation doesn't happen only inside us. It lives in the spaces we inhabit. In homes designed to catch morning sun in the kitchen, or to offer evening light in the bedroom. In libraries with tall, north-facing windows where the sun never glares, only glows. In cafes where pendant lights hang low, casting small pools of gold that make a table feel like its own world. These are architectural decisions, yes, but they are also emotional ones. We are trying to recreate what the planet once gave us for free, a slow, revolving palette of comfort. And that palette has language. We call it golden hour, twilight, moonlight, candlelight. Each phrase carries more than description, it carries feeling. Golden hour is when the world looks kinder. Twilight is when memory becomes more accessible. Moonlight makes everything soft, and candlelight wraps words in warmth. These are not just names. They are reminders of how much light can change not just how we see, but how we feel seen. The technology of light, however, has moved in a different direction. It has grown brighter, colder, more insistent. Fluorescents hum. LEDs pierce. Screens flood the eyes even at midnight. And while we are grateful for the function of these lights, we feel their weight. Sleep becomes harder, eyes strain, thoughts scatter. We feel exposed, even in solitude. That's because this kind of light was built for visibility, not tenderness. It shows, but it does not soothe. And so we rebel quietly. We string warm bulbs across balconies. We light fires when we don't need heat. We buy lamps with linen shades and set them to the lowest setting. We download apps that shift our screens toward amber in the evening. We light incense not for scent alone, but for the glow of its ember. We carry night lights not just for fear of the dark, but for love of the dim. These are not habits. These are survival instincts. The body remembering that harshness was never home. Light in its softest form invites attention without command. It makes a book more inviting, a room more forgiving, a face more open. Tender light does not flood a space, it nestles into corners. It reflects off walls in muted tones. It wraps a sleeping child without waking them. It lets you see, but not all at once. And in that partial seeing, mystery remains, mystery and peace. Even in nature, animals respond to this rhythm. Birds sing not at sunrise, but just before, when the light is still growing. Flowers close when the sky dims, not because the sun is gone, but because the angle of light tells them to rest. Some animals come out only in the blue hour when day and night share the sky. These behaviors are not random. They are love letters to light, composed across millennia. And we too perform these rituals. We dim the lights before sleep, even when we are not tired. We gather by fire even when we are not cold. We watch sunsets without needing to speak. And when we wake in the middle of the night, we do not flick on overheads. We reach for small lights, warm ones, ones that will not startle the body. We are, all of us, children of light's evolution, still shaped by its quiet gestures. Even artists, when trying to paint serenity, reach for tender light. A shaft of late sun across a wooden floor, the shimmer of afternoon through curtains, a face half-lit by candle. These scenes carry no action, but they carry presence. They remind the viewer not of events, but of moods, of atmospheres, of the emotional texture of light, because in the soft shadows we do not disappear, we become more real. Now imagine yourself in a room where everything glows just enough. A soft lamp in the corner, a flickering wick. The outside world hushed behind curtains. You are not being watched. You are not being asked anything. The light is simply there, like breath, like background, like balm. You can read or not. You can think or not. The space asks for nothing but your comfort. That is the power of tender light. And so, in this long evolution, from starlight to candlelight, from photosynthesis to circadian sleep, from ancient fire to amber bulb, we see that light did not become greater by becoming stronger. It became greater by becoming kinder. It learned, through life's slow unfolding, how to hold rather than flood, how to ease rather than expose, how to wrap us, not in radiance but in rest. Let us now ease into the closing stretch of this story, the final ripple of tender light that does not fade but folds gently into the skin of night. This is where light no longer needs to be seen to be known, where it becomes presence more than glow, memory more than beam. Because tender light never ends. It lingers, even after the source is gone. It becomes part of the air, part of you. In the last moments of daylight, when shadows lengthen and edges blur, the light becomes less about what is visible and more about what is felt. This is the hour when even the busiest streets grow quiet, when people speak softer, when windows turn golden and everything slows. It's not magic. It's biology meeting atmosphere. It's color bending toward rest. And we, shaped by light over millions of years, feel it in our bones. Something ancient, something cellular exhales. This is when reflection happens, when memories feel closer, when our inner world stirs. It is no accident that people fall in love under low light, that we tell stories by fire, that music feels deeper when played at dusk. Light, when softened, becomes a bridge between what is around us and what is within. It becomes the setting for all things gentle: touch, thought, breath, forgiveness. Even the objects around us change in tender light. A glass of water becomes a prism, a wall becomes a canvas, a face becomes poetry, harsh lines dissolve, surfaces glow. The same room under a different light becomes a sanctuary, and this sanctuary needs no grand design. It needs only the right tone, the quiet embrace of amber, the blue hush of twilight, the warm flicker of flame. Our earliest ancestors gathered around fire not only for warmth or cooking but for connection. That circle of light, surrounded by dark, created a sacred space. Eyes softened, voices lowered, time stretched, and even now when we sit around a fire pit or light candles on a table, we're recreating that feeling. We're not chasing brightness. We're calling home a piece of the ancient. This instinct flows into the rituals of rest, dimming the lights, lighting a single lamp, turning off the overhead and leaving only the small source by the bed. These are not modern habits. They are echoes of how we evolved. Sleep does not come to those flooded in light. It comes to those who drift, who surrender slowly, who are allowed to dissolve into darkness without fear. And even in that darkness, light does not leave. It softens itself into stars. It hums through street lamps in warm halos. It filters through blinds in thin gray lines. It touches the face of a sleeping child not to wake but to guard. This is how tender light loves, quietly, without asking to be seen. Some nights the moon becomes a reminder of this quiet devotion. Its glow is not sharp, it carries no heat, yet it transforms an entire landscape. Trees cast shadows, water glimmers. The world in moonlight becomes softer, more forgiving. It doesn't demand that you look at it, but if you do, you are changed. Because in that glow, you are reminded that light does not need to dominate to be powerful. It only needs to be present. We carry this presence with us, in the way we design spaces, in the way we photograph moments, in the way we paint memory. Rarely do we remember a moment by its clarity, we remember it by its light. The way the room looked that afternoon, the sun on the blanket, the glow in their eyes when they laughed. These are not details. These are the frames of feeling, and they are always lit by softness. Tender light, then, is not a background. It is a character. It moves through our lives as quietly as breath, shaping the way we see, the way we feel, the way we connect. It's in the glow of a kitchen late at night, the hush of a forest at sunrise, the blur of headlights on a rainy road. These are the places we feel most human, most whole, most ready to let go. So as this story closes, let the light dim gently. Let it curl itself around your thoughts like a soft blanket. Let it remind you that not all illumination is meant to reveal. Some is meant to comfort, to quiet, to wrap the world in a kind of kindness we rarely name but always recognize. And as you close your eyes, think not of brightness but of warmth, of the light that stays behind your eyelids, of the way the sun leaves its touch even after it sets, of the flicker of lamps in windows seen from far away. That is the light you carry. That is the glow you belong to. Because light, when it evolves toward tenderness, does not fade. It becomes part of the silence. It becomes part of the breath. And in that silence, in that breath, you are safe. You are safe to rest now. Long before wind moved through trees, before rivers cut paths through mountains, before breath rose and fell in sleeping lungs, there was silence. Not the kind that follows sound or fills the space between words, but an older silence, deeper than anything we can name. It lived in the smallest places. It hummed softly inside the building blocks of matter. It wrapped itself around particles we cannot see, particles we can barely imagine. This was the silence inside atoms, a stillness more vast than space, more patient than time. Atoms are not crowded. They are not dense or noisy, though they make up everything we touch. In truth, an atom is mostly empty. In the center is the nucleus, a tiny knot of protons and neutrons, heavy and still. Around it, electrons drift not in perfect circles but in clouds of probability. Their paths are uncertain, never fully traced, always shifting. And between the center and the outer cloud is distance, space, more emptiness than form. If an atom were the size of a football stadium, the nucleus would be no larger than a single grain of sand at midfield. Everything else would be quiet space. This vastness is not meaningless. It is the foundation of stillness. It is the reason things can be stable, the reason molecules can form and hold. Inside the silence of atoms are the gentle rules of the universe, rules that do not shout, rules that unfold like breath. Electromagnetism, gravity, the strong and weak nuclear forces, these are not battles, they are balances. And balance is a quiet thing. When we touch something, a wall, a cup, the skin of someone we love, we think our atoms are touching theirs, but they are not. Atoms never touch. What we feel is resistance, the pushback of electric fields. Our atoms gently repel the atoms of the world. It is like two soft clouds pressing together, never merging, only resting near each other. In this quiet repulsion we find solidity. We find the illusion of touch. We find a physical world built from things that never collide. Even light, that messenger of color and warmth, is shaped by atomic silence. Photons, packets of light, are absorbed and emitted by electrons as they move between energy levels. Each jump, each fall, each beam of light we see is the echo of an electron shifting quietly inside an atom. The glow of a candle, the shimmer on water, the gold of a morning sky, these are not chaotic flames. They are composed expressions, gentle releases of energy governed by silent laws. Inside your own body, billions of atoms move in harmony. They are held together by forces you do not feel, by equations you never learned, by silences too small to hear. Yet they breathe with you. They rest when you rest. They make your bones solid, your blood fluid, your senses sharp. And none of them ever raise their voices. None of them ever hurry. They simply exist as they always have, wrapped in the quiet of what is. The atoms in your body were not born here. Many came from distant stars. When stars died in great explosions, supernovae, they scattered elements across the universe. Carbon, calcium, iron, oxygen, all the pieces that would one day become hands and hearts. And when they arrived here, they did not arrive with noise. They settled into clouds. They cooled. They coalesced. They became earth and sea and eventually you. The silence inside you is older than your name. It is older than the sun. It is the original stillness, the hush between pulses. It is not something you need to create. It is something you already carry. And what of time? Even time bows to the silence inside atoms. Certain atoms, like cesium, vibrate with such perfect regularity that we use them to measure time itself. Atomic clocks keep our days, our GPS, our science. But the ticking they represent is not mechanical. It is quantum. It is a rhythm that occurs in places we cannot reach, repeating in darkness, never missing a beat. Time, as we know it, is stitched into the silence of atomic behavior. There are atoms that hold stories. Carbon atoms in your body were once part of trees, of soil, of other lives. Hydrogen in your water may have passed through the heart of a comet. The calcium in your teeth once floated in the bones of a fish. Atoms do not speak in words, but they carry history, not with noise, but with presence, with arrangement, with persistence, with quiet remembrance of where they have been. And though you cannot hear them, atoms sing. They vibrate ever so slightly. Every solid object has a natural frequency, and that frequency comes from the movement of atoms. This is not music in the traditional sense. It is not sound. It is structure. But in that structure lives a harmony, a balance of tension and calm. The same balance that allows bridges to stand, crystals to shine, and your voice to carry through air. Imagine now the world stripped of noise. No engines, no voices, no hum of machines. Beneath that you would still find vibration, not silence as absence, but silence as presence. The kind that holds everything, the kind that gives shape to form. That is the silence inside atoms. It is not empty, it is full of waiting, full of holding, full of becoming. So tonight, as you rest, know that inside every breath, inside every muscle, every memory, every dream, there are atoms quietly humming their truth. They are not shouting for attention. They are not trying to be noticed. But they are there, steady and ancient. The silence you seek is already within you. It has always been. It always will be. Let us float gently now into the deeper folds of what it means to carry silence inside us, not as absence, but as architecture. Every breath you take is made of atoms in motion, but none of that motion is noisy. Oxygen finds its way into blood, into cells, into the mitochondria that quietly turn it into energy. No fanfare, no spark, only soft chemistry unfolding atom by atom. You are powered not by volume, but by stillness. Your body is not loud. It is symphonic in its quiet. When we imagine stillness, we often picture a lack of movement. But the atoms inside you never stop moving. Even in sleep, even in deep rest, they vibrate. Molecules stretch, rotate, reform. This is a different kind of silence, not frozen but fluid, not static but steady. It is a silence that breathes, that adjusts, that listens. This atomic stillness is what allows cells to communicate, muscles to heal, thoughts to flicker through the folds of your brain like whispers on water. And yet all of this happens inside a body that appears still. When you lie in bed, wrapped in warmth, eyes closed, the silence you feel is mirrored by the one inside you. The trillions of atoms in your bones, your skin, your breath, they do not make a sound, but they hold the shape of you. They carry the weight of your being. They are the reason you can rest. They are the reason you wake. Even emotion lives here. Every feeling has a chemical signature, tiny messengers released, received, absorbed. A wave of calm may begin with a thought, but it is carried by atoms. A memory may arrive in a rush, but it is stored in molecules. The quiet chemistry of love, of grief, of joy, all of it is built from silence. Not the silence of cold emptiness, but of structure, of resonance, of soft connection. You are not just reacting to the world, you are responding to it, atom by atom, silence by silence. In this way, the silence inside atoms becomes the language of life. It is not spoken but known. It is not written but remembered. Every heartbeat, every blink, every tear that falls carries within it the stillness of creation. You are made not just of matter but of pause, of breath between moments, of space that knows how to hold without collapsing. Let yourself feel it now, not in your ears but in your chest, the softness that holds you up, the quiet that never leaves even when the world is loud, the space between cells, the calm between heartbeats. It has always been there, it always will be, and in that silence you are whole. Now drift with me one final time into the quietest part of this story, where sound no longer guides and stillness becomes the thread that holds everything together. The silence inside atoms has no beginning and no end. It simply is. It waits without needing permission. It exists without needing to prove itself. And within that patience lies a kind of peace we spend our lives trying to remember. Even death does not disturb atomic silence. When a body rests, when breath has ended, the atoms do not vanish. They stay, they scatter, they become part of soil, of air, of water. Their quiet persists, moving from form to form without grief, without pause. There is no fear in this, only continuity, only the soft passing of presence from one shape into another. The silence that lives inside you now will someday live inside a tree, a river, a distant star. It is not lost, it is shared. And so when you feel small or unsure or distant from yourself, remember this: you are made of what endures. You are built from stillness that holds galaxies together. You carry within you the hush of stars, the pause before light, the waiting space that allows everything else to shine. This silence does not ask you to be more. It asks only that you be, gently, fully, now. As night deepens around you and your breath softens into rhythm, feel the echo of atomic calm beneath your ribs. Let it be a lullaby older than time. Let it remind you that rest is not weakness, that quiet is not emptiness, that you were never separate from the softness of the universe. You have always been part of it. Sleep now, you are held by silence, and that silence will never let you go.